Left on the edge. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, while everyone's wondering how low the market could go, the angle's wondering how low can the Democrats go? Now, there is a sickness on the left. It's a mind virus that seems to be getting worse, one where killers and other criminals become deities. As long as criminals target what the liberals despise, they'll be treated with empathy and understanding, even reverence.
This is the United States of America, as if we don't lionize criminals, as if we don't have, we don't stand murderers of all sorts, and we give them Netflix shows.
Attention chippies like Taylor Lorenz even brag about how cool they are for standing up for the man charged with murdering a well-known health insurance CEO.
I saw the biggest audience growth that I've ever seen because people were like, oh, some journalist is actually speaking to the anger that we feel. You're going to see women especially that feel like, oh my God, right? Like here's this man who's revolutionary, who's famous, who's handsome, who's young, who's smart. He's a person that seems this morally good man, which is hard to find.
Yeah, this is really funny. Funny for Brian Thompson's wife and children, you think? Now, there's nothing funny about how unhinged and how psychotic the far left has become. Women and men fetishizing over a killer like he's some new Abercrombie model. And again, it's good for a few chuckles.
Let's begin with the story. Everyone is still talking about the arrest of Luigi Mangione, alleged CEO killer, and the reason conjugal visit is trending on Google.
Are TV personalities stoking more killer worship? Of course they are. Maybe it's not their intention, but they are. They normalize the crime when they downplay it for some cheap applause line.
This is confusing as a straight man to me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do to attract women. One day it's do more work around the house. The next it's be a better listener. And now apparently it's execute the leader of a Fortune 500 company. Which one is it, ladies?
Of course, we all know that line wouldn't have made late night if the victim had, let's say, been the head of a left-wing NGO, heaven forbid. But legitimizing murder, never acceptable. But I'm sure there are plenty of disappointed fringe leftists out there today after learning that another would-be Trump assassin is in custody.
In February, the bodies of Tatiana Cassap and Donald Mayer were found in their home in the village of Waukesha. Both had been shot. Their son, 17-year-old Nikita Cassap, was later arrested in Kansas. Now, a federal search warrant says Cassap wrote a manifesto calling for the assassination of President Donald Trump to start a revolution to, quote, save the white race. The warrant says Cassap talked about his plans with other people who encouraged him and helped him.
Look, at least we know more about him than we do about Thomas Crooks. And the vicious hyperbole of our political leaders is clearly making things worse. Every politician knows when he or she uses words like Hitler or Nazi to describe someone, there's a risk that someone will hear those words and decide to take matters into their own hands. After Butler and the foiled plot at Trump International, you'd think that everyone would take it down a notch, but they didn't. After dining out on January 6th for 4 years, Democrats have spawned the rage generation.
Tell me what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like.
Ho ho! Elon Musk has got to go!
The irony is lost on them, of course. The cars they drove as a badge of honor just a year ago, they're now torching and scratching or laughing and enjoying the moments when others are. 40-year-old Jameson Wagner was arrested for arson attacks on Tesla in Albuquerque and also on the Republican Party headquarters there. The guy's less than a zero, but to the Trump and Elon haters, he's kind of a folk hero. There are some Democrats who do seem clued in, however, especially when the violence and the crime hits close to home, as it did over Passover when Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence was broken into and set ablaze, allegedly by this freak, Cody Bomber, who said he would have taken a hammer to the governor if he could have.
This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. And it has to stop. We have to be better than this.
100% correct. This is appalling. President Trump was asked about it today.
Have you attributed a motive through the FBI investigation behind the attack on Governor Josh Shapiro over the weekend?
No, I haven't, but the attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
Thankfully, Shapiro and his wife were okay. But now it's time for his party to step up and with one voice, all of them, in unison, condemn all the hate and the violence. Supreme Court justices shouldn't have to worry about their security when they author an opinion. A senator shouldn't have to worry when he's at a restaurant. A congressman shouldn't have to fear playing a baseball game. And a presidential candidate should never have to be ushered off stage with blood streaming down his cheek. And of course, his supporters shouldn't have to wonder if they're risking their lives to attend a rally. So Democrats, tell your party to debate, don't destroy. Heaven forbid if one of these deranged fanatics finally get their way. And yes, there are obviously nuts on both sides, and heated rhetoric has been around since our founding. But Republicans do not equivocate when Democrats are threatened. We rally. Remember, for Christians, this is Holy Week. It's a time to reflect on Christ's life and teaching, his suffering, and of course, the great miracle of his resurrection and our redemption. And we all, whatever you believe, we have the God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What a blessing. So let's start acting like it. And that's the angle.
How did you enjoy the fight?
I thought it was great. I thought they were all great. Have you ever seen that before? Have you ever witnessed that?
No, first
time. Something, right?
Yeah. First time. Five.
Those are seriously tough people.
Any of the fighters say anything to you?
Yeah, they all said. Every one of them came up at the end, and they were great. I mean, they're all warriors. You know, they're modern-day warriors.
What did you tell them, sir?
Just good fight. I mean, the ones, they all came up, every one of them. You saw that. And very respectful of the office.
Trump took a bullet and said, fight, fight, fight. You know what he's about. Afterwards, he got on Air Force One and had his granddaughter, Kai, meet his favorite opponent.
You know the fake news? This is the fake news.
Hey, what's up, everyone? How are you guys? Good morning.
The fake news turned the Oval Office into the Octagon today. And you won't believe who they were fighting for. Remember the MS-13 gangbanger that the media calls a Maryland dad? Well, he got deported, and now CNN wants him back.
You said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility.
Yep, the press is fighting to have gangbangers smuggled back into the country. And if they're not smuggled back in, they're calling it a constitutional crisis. Mr. Kilmore Garcia, who broke into the country under Barack Obama, was arrested in 2019 in the company of other ranking MS-13 gang members. Homeland Security called him a verified member of MS-13. And 2 immigration judges upheld that he was MS-13. A judge thought Garcia was so dangerous, he denied him bond and called him a flight risk. The reason he wasn't deported earlier was because Garcia's attorney convinced the judge that if he was sent back to El Salvador, a rival gang would kill him. Sounds like a gangbanger to me. Trump designates MS-13 a terrorist organization,
And we're not just going to let foreign terrorists, gangbangers, hang around. So we shipped them home. So the MS-13 lawyer sues, and this little district judge, Boasberg, says he wasn't supposed to be sent back to El Salvador. He can be sent back to any other country in the world except El Salvador. It's his home country. Boasberg says you have to turn the plane around. And the Supreme Court was like, no. Boasberg, butt out.
It's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens. A district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children.
CNN doesn't want to be neighbors with MS-13, so why does CNN want men and women in Maryland to live next to him? This so-called Maryland dad wasn't coaching girls soccer. He was human trafficking. That's what Homeland Security told us. CNN wants more human trafficking in Maryland?
I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
The White House says, you're asking us about a citizen from El Salvador who's now living in El Salvador. Why don't you ask the president of El Salvador, who happens to be sitting right here?
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
CNN just asked the president of El Salvador if he was going to smuggle a terrorist into the United States. The president of El Salvador thinks we're crazy. Democrat Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, is demanding to meet with El Salvador's Presidente. And if he doesn't get a meeting with the Presidente, he says he's going to fly to El Salvador himself. Rachel Morin was a Maryland mom. She was raped and murdered by an MS-13 member from El Salvador. And Van Hollen never flew to El Salvador to confront anyone. Van Hollen's trying to get a guy out of prison whose gang murdered Rachel Morin. Why aren't Democrats meeting with CEOs of American companies that ship jobs overseas? Maybe we should be asking for those back, not an MS-13 gangbanger. What are Democrats and the media actually asking for here?
You are all asking a lot of questions about this, and you all seem to care about it a lot. So let's see if any of you have researched anything about this issue at all. Can anyone here tell me what would happen to the illegal alien from El Salvador if he came back to the United States? Does anyone here know? Does anyone want to guess? Any of you?
He could be with his family.
What does any of you know the answer to the question? Legally, what would happen if he came back here? Does any of you know? Any of you?
Do you really
you've been writing. I'm talking now. You need to stop. I'm talking now. Does any of you?
Why was it unanimous?
You're done.
You can't undeport a terrorist. They want us to fly a terrorist back to Maryland. What? So a judge could fill out some paperwork and send him right back to El Salvador? Or do they want to fly the terrorist back here and just have him hang around in Maryland? The president of El Salvador couldn't believe how the media was asking about returning a terrorist instead of how Trump secured the border.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually.
When CNN went back on the air, here's what they said.
I just want to say, for the record, since we heard President Trump say in the Oval Office that CNN hates our country, CNN does not hate our country. That should go without saying.
Maybe it doesn't go without saying. maybe a lot of people on that work don't hate America, but they definitely don't love it.
Everything they're doing runs against making America great.
Well,
it was never great, so I'm not going to say the again part, but making America great.
Here's a breaking news. We live in a racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic country.
When we got our freedom, our quote-unquote freedom, we were never restored whole, which is why you hear about reparations. So until the United States atones for that and makes good on that, we're still living in a racist country.
If America is so bad, why are millions of foreigners breaking into it? Trump's deporting so many foreign criminals that AOC's running out of friends.
We must acknowledge the terrifying moment that we are in right now, and that what we are hearing and seeing with our own eyes is, in fact, happening. We are watching our neighbors, students, and friends being fired, targeted, and disappeared. It is real.
AOC's been hanging out with the wrong people, if these are her friends. 7 gangbangers from Tren de Aragua got picked up this weekend. Not the kind of people you want to live next to. Sushi John was also iced. Who's Sushi John? He's the Chinese spy who was running a noodle shop in New Jersey. Trump wants every bad hombre out.
How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador?
As many as possible.
Homan's going back to college. Florida universities are partnering with ICE to scoop out illegals. Chicago and Philadelphia are canceling Cinco de Mayo parades because they think Tom Homan's going to show up and arrest everybody. But why? Trump loves Cinco de Mayo. The taco bowls from Trump Tower are muy bueno. The president of El Salvador says keep sending them here.
Sometimes they say that we imprisoned thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions.
This isn't about the people who get sent back. It's about keeping the millions here safe. This is Donald Trump's Octagon.
Thanks to a 9-0 decision from the U.S. Supreme Court, an MS-13 gang member, citizen not of the United States, but El Salvador, will not be coming back to this country. You know what? You break our laws, you don't respect our borders and sovereignty, that means you go home. To the utter dismay of fake news, CNN. Take a look.
Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, 2 courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country.
Would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous.
Law and order, safety, security, respect our laws, border sovereignty, come in, but come in legally. Now, tonight we can report that 11 more violent illegal immigrants, including 7 Tren de Aragua gang members, were deported to El Salvador and their notorious prison system over the weekend. President Trump has a duty to protect all of you and our way of life. What happened under Biden at the border is unforgivable. We will pay the price for his open border policies for decades likely to come. And by the way, today, the illegal immigrant who killed a Maryland mother of 5, we've spoken of her often, Rachel Morin, thankfully convicted of murder, but we should never forget the pain, the suffering caused by what was the most preventable national security crisis that Joe and Kamala created at our border. Now, thankfully, as promised, President Trump has secured our borders, is now deporting as many criminal illegals as possible. By the way, if you didn't come here legally, you are a criminal. And all it took was leadership. We're seeing the same thing now when it comes to trade. There are now more than 100 countries that are begging to negotiate with the Trump White House. 15 hard deals are on the table. But if you're watching the state-run legacy media mob this morning, you might have seen Janet Yellen once famously promised that person that inflation was transitory. Well, she referred to Donald Trump's economic vision as a pipe dream. Take a look.
I don't understand the rationale for the tariffs. Perhaps it's to bring back American manufacturing, but I really think that's a pipe dream and not something that is likely to be accomplished. And we could even raise questions about whether or not, in a broad-based way, that's a desirable goal.
The rationale, how about stop ripping off America, stop abusing America, especially our allied countries, most of whom depend on the U.S. for their national security. Other big news today, tech giant NVIDIA announced a $500 billion investment right here in the USA, entirely manufacturing their supercomputers, AI infrastructure inside this country for the very first time. But according to ABC's John Carl, another elitist in the media, this type of investment is not actually a good thing. Apparently, he's worried that we will become, quote, a nation of cobblers. Take a look.
The president also said there's going to be a transition cost, transition problems. I mean, we are going to see higher prices in America as well. It's not like you can open a factory tomorrow to build iPhones or to make sneakers, shoes. I mean, we buy a lot of shoes in this country. 99% of them are made elsewhere. I mean, are we going to become a nation of cobblers again? I mean, this is going to mean higher prices, isn't it?
I mean, have you seen, I don't necessarily think so. I think the idea is that we can manufacture here in America.
All right, as a former blue-collar worker for decades of my life, I kind of take it as a compliment, but this isn't just about good American jobs. It's also a matter of national security. You know, relying on China for pharmaceuticals or other countries for semiconductor chips, that's a dangerous game. And right on cue, China just suspended exports of rare earth minerals to the U.S. in a blatant attempt to kneecap weapons and tech manufacturing. So Donald Trump is absolutely right. This reliance on China and other countries will come to an end once and for all. They can have free and fair trade if they choose, or reciprocal tariffs. That's their choice. The president will almost never get any positive coverage from the legacy media mob. The good news is almost no one in the U.S. trusts or respects these people anyway. So what's the point? It doesn't really matter what they say or what they write any place, anywhere. Anyway, these far-left Democrats pretending to be newsmen are screaming into the void. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.